I'm moving up. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm moving onward and upward, yeah. Stepping out of the world I know, 'cause I'm weary.
Welcome to Thoughts on the Run. This is a new version, something a little bit different from what I've done up until now. So this is part of Runeveryday, and it's an opportunity for me to reflect not so much on the run that I did in the morning, although that's my intention as well, but to reflect on the thoughts that I had on the run and what I'm working with at the moment. And hopefully some of what I'm working with might be relevant to what you're working with, or give you some thoughts that you might ponder for your well-being. Let's call it that. All right. So this morning, it's Monday, it's the 15th of February, and I ran a Tyrone this morning. So my alarm was set for 4:30, but I woke up at 4:20 feeling very refreshed, even after having had a half marathon run yesterday and feeling like I did push myself a little bit. So that's on the back of last week doing some 106 kilometers. So a lot of fatigue in the legs. And I should say, when I say fatigue, I should rather say lots of miles in the legs, because my legs don't feel fatigued. Part of Runeveryday is that I've found that my recovery is very quick. And I have more mental fatigue in a Monday morning run after a busy week rather than bodily fatigue. Yeah. So we ran into Melville this morning, a route called Pablo Escobar, named after a restaurant that used to be in Melville. Unfortunately, he's no longer there. And I was a little bit slower than the group this morning. We were running at about 5 minutes, just under 5:50 a kilometer. The group was a bit quicker than me, but it was a recovery run, which was very nice. And some of the things that I'm working with in my thoughts on the run relate to two podcasts that I've listened to very recently. One called the High Performance Podcast was an interview with Jonny Wilkinson, the English rugby player who won the World Cup for England with one of the famous drop kicks. So that was the one, and the other podcast was in fact a YouTube recording of Naval having a conversation on this new app called Clubhouse. I think that's the name. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that technology yet, but he was just talking about happiness and achievement in life, and I made a few kind of notes on that yesterday, and they're sitting with me. I'm reflecting on Jonny Wilkinson's experience of having to say, I had to completely eradicate, maybe not the right word, eliminate the fact that I am a rugby player and my history in rugby. I had to eliminate that from my life to be able to reimagine my ability to perform at whatever area he chooses to. So his thinking of his performance in terms of what he had achieved on the rugby field prevented him from thinking about what he could achieve off the rugby field, because it contained him. It's a very that was my takeaway from the podcast. There's so much to it, and it's so deep, and I'll put some notes underneath where you can go and listen to the podcast. So much to work with there. But I am working with what is constraining me in my ability to perform. And I shared a story with a friend of mine this morning on a telephone conversation while I was on holiday. In December, I spent a day in the Kruger Park, and I remember coming across this waterway, this water hole, let's use that lingo, and in the far corner there was this little puddle of water, which was probably 1/10 of the size of what this dam would have been, and in there was a whole host of catfish that were flopping around in this puddle of water. And the analogy that's going on for me at the moment is that I feel like one of those catfish flopping around in a little piece of water here in South Africa, where it's getting smaller and smaller, shallower and shallower, and providing less and less opportunity. And I'm asking myself, how can I think of myself as a global citizen where I can do business in any part of the world, rather than just confine my thinking to my depleting pond here in South Africa? That's what I'm working on at the moment, and the podcast with Jonny Wilkinson has prompted some deeper thinking on that matter. I'm also working with the wisdom and the beauty of the work of Naval. So on Twitter, just go and search for Naval, N-A-V-A-L, and very quickly you'll find some beautiful wisdom from a man who, in my mind, has performed exceptionally well at this game of life. And the things that I am reflecting on around what Naval has to say and how it pertains to me is the subject of, one is intelligence. What is intelligence and how do you measure it? And secondly, the more long-term thinking around what it is that I do rather than the short-term thinking. So I think for a long time I've been quite short-termist in my thinking, and that has to do, what do I need to do today and tomorrow and next month that pays the bills and earns me the revenue that I need. And in thinking too short-term, I have not been thinking 5 and 10 years about what it is that I am going to achieve in that timeline that isn't just a repetition of 6-month theory thinking, but is something that has the compound growth of 10 years of thinking. It's a very different way of thinking of the future for me. And to get back to the intelligence piece, the piece that Naval left me with is thinking that surely the real measure of intelligence is measured by whether one gets out of life what they want. If you are able to do that, if I am able to do that, that must be a sign of intelligence. Which then begs the question, what do I want out of life? What it is that you want? And are you getting that? So I'm sitting with that today. Performance and what it is that I want, and how can I be more long-term in my thinking? I'd like to hear from you. What are you sitting with? What's important to you? What do you want out of life? And how are you working towards that? So that's me, over and out for today.